So welcome back to Seekers and Cynics. My name is Richard Bentley and this is Bodmin Road Church, and what I'm going to do today is part two of a talk asking the question, are the New Testament documents reliable? Can we trust what we find written there, particularly in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John? Last time we saw that this question breaks down really into three separate bits. If we're asking about reliability, we need to ask, first of all, are the people writing these accounts the actual people who were there, who were the eyewitnesses? It's no good having something that was written by someone hundreds of years later who doesn't really know what they're talking about. We answered that last time. The next question is that do we actually have in our possession today accurate copies of what that original eyewitness wrote? It's no good, is it, if someone's altered it over the years, like Chinese whispers down the ages, so that what we've got today bears little resemblance to the original document. That's the second aspect of reliability, and we answered that, and you can go back and listen to that talk. That's not a problem. We know, because we can compare a great many transcripts and documents. We know that we do have a very accurate version of what Matthew, Mark, Luke and John wrote. When you read those Gospels, you are reading what they wrote, except of course for a layer of translation in between, but that's not a problem, that's not a difficult thing. But we do have what they wrote. The third issue around reliability is simply this, that did they actually tell us the truth? Did Matthew, Mark, Luke and John make all this up, a piece of fiction, or were they sincerely and honestly telling us the truth? That's the question that I want to look at today. And in order to answer that, we've got to treat these guys as witnesses in court. We've got to put them in the witness box and we've got to cross-examine them. Are they honest witnesses? Or are they telling lies, or have they been led astray? And we can do that. They're not alive to do that, but we've got their records, we've got what they wrote, and we can really cross-examine it and ask ourselves, does this testimony have the ring of truth about it? What I want to do here in this short talk is give you my reasons why my analytical and scientifically biased brain nevertheless concludes that these New Testament documents, the Gospels, are authentic and telling the truth. Why do I believe that? Well, the first reason is this, that there are four Gospels, largely independently written, and those four witnesses, those four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, are remarkably consistent. Now, if you read them, it's quite clear from their arrangement and selection of material that they're not collaborating, they're working independently, and yet they tell a remarkably consistent story and give a remarkably consistent picture of Jesus. If you've got four witnesses in court standing in the dock and they're all telling pretty much the same story, and they've not got in a room together beforehand and plotted it all out, then you've really got to pay attention to some of that. Moreover, where they do occasionally differ on minor details, and they do in places, that actually adds for me some authenticity to it all, that these are honest journalists seeking to tell us what they know, and they've not colluded and got their heads together and tied up every loose detail in advance. And just as 4 or 5 newspapers will report an event with slight differences, that's actually authentic, that's normal, it's what you'd expect. So that's the first reason. The second reason that I trust these accounts is this, that there is always accuracy on local data. So where these accounts make reference incidentally to geographical or political facts, place names, people's names, descriptions of places or buildings, that stuff always checks out. It can very often be verified by archaeological or historical evidence that we've got that's external to the Bible, and it checks out. In other words, these are not myths or fairy tales. They are stories anchored in a very real historical and political set of circumstances which are being accurately described by the writers. The third reason that I have a real trust for these New Testament documents, for the Gospels, is that they include all sorts of awkward and embarrassing stuff. They include details which don't really help their own cause, and that just has a ring of honesty about it. So let me give you an example. These documents are being published into the early church a few years after Jesus, which is being led by Peter, James, John, and others. But they contain stories about the foolishness and the failure of those very church leaders who are, in a sense, publishing those stories. You just wouldn't do that if you were making this stuff up. If you were making up some propaganda to support your new religion, you would paint your leaders as heroes in the story. You wouldn't admit that they all ran away when Jesus was crucified, or that Peter denied Jesus, or that Thomas barely believed any of it. You wouldn't make those admissions. They're embarrassing. But the fact that those things are in the Gospels gives them a real ring of truth. It seems clear to me that the writers were prepared to be brutally honest, even at cost to themselves. The fourth reason that I sense these Gospels about Jesus have a real ring of truth to them is that although, yes, they do contain stories of the miraculous, and that might stretch our scientific minds a little bit, nevertheless, the miraculous is always described with remarkable restraint. So Jesus walks on water, yes, but only once, and not in front of a big crowd. Why tone it down like that? If you're making this up, surely, let's put it on stage and make a big thing of it. The restraint in the account of the miracles and their setting in very natural, real life context has a real ring of truth about it to me. So that's another reason. My ultimate and final reason, and I've got to leave lots out here just for time, but it's this, is who would die for what they knew was a lie? Who would lay down their life, give up their life for something they knew they'd made up? And so many of those early church writers and leaders, they lost their lives at the hands of the authorities for speaking about Jesus. You just wouldn't do that unless, you were absolutely sure and convinced of what it was. And if you knew you'd made it up, you absolutely would not give up your life for what you knew to be a piece of fiction. And yet so many of those early church leaders laid down their lives in order to get this message out. That's what you call skin in the game, and it gives me a very strong sense of trust in what has been passed on to us. Bottom line is, I would encourage you very simply to go away and read the Gospels for yourself. Don't take my word for it, please. Give them an honest reading. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John won't take you long. Just go sit quiet and read. And as you read, ask yourself, does this read like fiction? Does this read like it's something that's been made up? Does this read like it's the work of an honest, intelligent journalist or the work of a gullible peasant? Ask yourself those questions as you read, and I hope you'll conclude with me that the Gospels have an amazing ring of truth about them. The frightening thing, of course, then, is if they are true, we've got a response to make. If they're true, then they tell us that Jesus Christ is God himself, come in the flesh to reveal his love and his grace to us. That he's died on the cross to take away our sins, and that he's risen from the dead in order to give us a new life and a new heart and a new start. If those things are true, then we've got a response and a choice to make. But I hope you'll open the book and take a look for yourself. See you next time.